You're not visible yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I see myself. Hey, Gwen. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me back. I'd like to say to all the other invisible speakers here that I'm saying hello. This was supposed to be a panel discussion, Gwen. So now to hear that I'm starting us off on reclaiming, rewriting narratives of queer stories, I just want to be 2 minutes. Thank you so much. My approach to reclaiming and rewriting queer stories is actually not to do anything new. Instead, it's to be authentic and to find people that are honest enough to kind of share what they have to say right now. So I'm very much a Q&A kind of person. I repeat the same questions for multiple people all the time. And the beautiful thing, when you see everybody answering the same question in a different way, that's how you learn. Like, for example, if the question is, what makes you proud to be trans in our trans awareness month that we just had this month, it was so wonderful to hear different reasons why people are proud to be trans, are proud to be non-binary, because some of the stories, you feel like, okay, I've heard this, you know, I'm free to be myself, I'm free to express myself, I found a community, but some of the stories can be really touching. And if somebody else can hear that, actually, this is how old I am, because every time I share a story, there'll be somebody's name, somebody's pronouns, their age, where they come from. And then somebody else will be like, hey, this person is my age, they're from where I'm from, and they have the same fears and the same, they've had the same experiences as me, basically. And they found a community, right? And as the host of these kinds of conversations, we always hope that people come back to us and say, hey, I just saw this, you just hosted this, who is this person? Can you create a space for us to meet? So the claiming that has been done is by the people themselves, and the claiming that can be done is by other people, again, who can say, I also want to claim my story. Can you facilitate that process? Can you create the safe space for other people to witness it? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nusana. Okay, that was our first speaker, Nusana. Our second speaker on today's panel is Ria Mokone. Ria Mokone, I hope she's present. Are you there, Ria?
Maybe, I'm not sure. Are we ever anywhere?
Okay, ma'am. I'm about to introduce you.
Yes, but I'm.
You nervous?
I mean, maybe not. Because like there's somebody in this chat with us that I don't think has ever heard me do a panel about queerness and reclaiming our history, reclaiming any of our narratives. He's heard about it, but he very much shocked me when he joined the Zoom today. So I'm very excited to see what questions he asks. Yeah.
Okay, so Ria Mokone, she goes by the pronouns she, her, they, them. And Ria is the founder and director of Outside the Booth, which is a creative social enterprise that uses artistic videos in order to challenge narratives surrounding the BIPOC and queer communities. She's also the former program manager of the Free State Arts and Health and Die Skrywerswerf, and the executive producer of the Public Art Project. And that art project initiates people about the LGBTQI rights and social injustices in Africa. She has presented a guest lecture on gender equality and the LGBTQI rights in the African context. This guest lecture was for her postgraduate program of development studies at the University of Free State, and in her role as the program manager of the Free State Arts Health, she has also developed community curated art exhibitions and a 3D visual art gallery exhibition in Mozilla Hubs for the Platfontein print project, which was then featured in the International Ars Electronica Art Garden in 2020. She has also worked within the First Nation and Indigenous communities, and she understands the importance of respecting and safeguarding secret and sacred knowledge. She has been mentored by David Doyle and the executive director of DADAA Australian, which is the biggest arts and health disability organization in Western Australia. Within 2021, she became a fellow for the Global Arts in Medicine Fellowship, and then later became the coordinator for the South African Element Group. She is an experienced and becoming a creative, a producer, manager, and social activist who is passionate about using these arts as a medium to produce real societal shifts and real mental change. You go, Ms. Ria.
So how much do you hate me now after reading that whole bio?
I don't hate
That sounded
you.
long, but thank you. Thank you so much I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. Apologies for that. So you're doing good. Are you ready for the discussion we're about to have on reclaiming queer stories?
Yes, this is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I'm very, very excited to also hear Nosana's take on how we can reclaim some of our history and some of the queer stories that sort of have been erased, that have gone through erasure due to patriarchy and Catholic Church role and Christianity, and see how we can move forward to sort of educate people and make education accessible for more people to know exactly what's happening in our community. So yeah, I'm excited. Hope you guys are excited as well.
Okay, so before we delve deeper into what the panel discussion is going to be about, I'm next going to play a video that is in regards to the mistranslation that shifted from culture in the year 1946. So I'm about to play that video.
Neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals shall inherit the kingdom of God.
May your Holy Spirit speak, Lord God. Speak the truth, Father God.
Coming from a family that tells me that what I am separates me from the love of God has sent me on a 20-year spiral of self-doubt and loneliness.
The Bible says that they're worthy of death. I went into this research wanting the answer no matter what it revealed. If God said, you are such a horrible abomination that I needed to rid this planet of myself, I was willing to do that because I love God that much. But when I dug in, that's not what I found. This is a 1946 Revised Standard Version. So this is the first time in all of history, in any language, that the word homosexual ended up in any Bible.
They combine two words that have nothing to do with each other into homosexual.
There were 22 people in the translation team for the RSV, and there were 90 boxes of archived notes found at Yale University.
We didn't know what we were going to find when we dug into the RSV notes.
Third day, we found what we were looking for. It was a letter written by a 21-year-old seminary student to the translation team saying, hey, I think you chose the wrong word when you put the word homosexual in here, and I don't understand why you did that.
Says, I write this after many months of serious thought and hard work to point out that which to me is a serious weakness in translation. Misinformed and misguided people may use the RSV translation of 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10 as a sacred weapon. He wrote the letter as David S.
We found him, and he's still alive?
So I wrote a letter, and to my amazement, I got a reply back about 3 weeks later. I received your letter, and there may be something to what you say.
The domino had already fallen, and that word followed through to all the other mainline translations that we have today.
By the 90s, homosexual is in 6 different passages where it just doesn't belong.
I started weeping because I was thinking about all the damage that had been done over the last 60 years.
The lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic.
The Bible condemns homosexuality as a sin.
Why did they put the word homosexual into the Bible? What were they thinking?
The church is doubling down on this issue because they've so politicized it.
We're going to do the work to make this thing right.
This shows that there was a mistake, and it's an honest mistake, and we have an opportunity to change it.
Wow. Okay, that was the video. So with that video, the question I have for both our panel speakers is how would you say Christianity and colonization relates to how we see homosexuality and the queer community in today's society?
I see we're not gonna start off with the light-hearted questions. We're gonna start like right into
We're diving right into
it. But I guess diving right into the deep stuff. I'm gonna start so that and then Nasana will add. But honestly speaking, my opinion is the fact that homosexuality or like homophobia specifically, I don't want to say homosexuality specifically, because I think Christianity and colonization bred a culture of homophobia, right? In the aspect of the fact that even though colonization happened around the 1600s, specifically for us in South Africa, I guess 1700, it happened in 1700s, in 1640 something. The whole idea of homosexuality is a sin comes specifically from the Christian faith, right? Predominantly from the Christian faith. And the weird thing is, like a homosexual, the word homosexual was actually invented by the Germans during Hitler's reign. So even the word doesn't have like a really nice association to it, because when you think about it, it was used during Hitler's reign to pacify a group of people that were sent into gas chambers and also killed. Because a lot of people forget that it wasn't just Jewish people that Hitler killed, and homosexuals as well, or people that were perceived as gay or trans, and other people who weren't Jewish but didn't support the mass genocide that was taking place. So the fact of the matter is, it has a huge effect on how the queer community is viewed today in today's society, specifically because of the fact that every Tom, Dick, and Harry will tell you about how you're going to hell because you're gay. And they don't even understand that there was a mistranslation that actually took place, as the video shows. And whether it was an honest mistake, who knows? Maybe somebody like bribed the RSV translation group and was like, yo, I want you guys to turn the word pedestry, I hope I'm saying it right, which is basically the word for pedophile, into the word homosexuality in the Bible. And considering, yeah, man, like I could go on and on about this. Nasana, please stop me from talking now. But in essence, I do feel like it has a major impact on how the queer community is perceived today, because that's the one thing that a lot of people have the biggest hang up on. It's wrong because the Bible tells me so, but does the Bible actually tell you so? Or does white men who in like closed stores translated it to what you were expecting it to be? Yeah. Sana, are you still with us? Have you disappeared?
Rosanna.
I think Rosanna disappeared.
Apologies, I'm back. No, I disappeared for a second. I apologize.
No problem.
Can you please refresh me?
Does that mean you missed the question?
Yes, it does mean that. I apologize.
So Gwen did not hold back, okay? She immediately started with like the rough questions, all right? So we watched like a little clip about this documentary film called 1946.
I saw that.
And it's basically about the mistranslation. Yeah. And her question was basically, how does Christianity and colonization, I guess, relate, ne, to how we see homosexuality today? Specifically the queer community. And I went on a rant about Christianity, as I normally do in religion, and the fact that in essence, it was just a bunch of white people in a room by themselves, like a bunch of white men, let's specify that, who are in a room by themselves, and we don't know who paid them off or who didn't pay them off, just so that they could change the word pedestry, which means pedophile, right, to the word homosexuality. And that is such a huge jump from somebody who keeps the company of the same gender to like from one to pedophile. That is a huge jump. And every other chapter or verse that actually speaks about homosexuality in the Bible was translated from that fact to that. So I went like on a bit of a rant. How are you, Yvonne?
No, so I mean, that's some new information for me. What I've always been so curious to ask is that, like the word sodomy, where has that disappeared to? Is that also lying in Christianity, or is sodomy now just rape? You know, I'd just like to quote my favorite bassist, jazz musician, Michelle DiNicello, who's got an album, Peace Beyond Passion, where she also questions the Bible and she questions Ecclesiastes and Leviticus. And where I believe that it lies, where the line is between, or not really the line, where the intersection is between Christianity and homosexuality, is where I question it, where other artists question it, where we are honest about where we feel forsaken or we feel excluded, and where we feel like we want to be in religious spaces, we want to be in spiritual spaces, but we are unwelcome. So I love it when I meet people who are saying, this is how I fought to be in my church. This is how I fought to wear the uniform that was only for women, but I'm transgender. So those stories of victory, those stories of saying that you can't exclude me because this is my faith, this is my God, and therefore your judgment of me is not going to let me run away. And also most of the time you find that it's not actually the faith or the church that has an opinion of exclusion of queer people, but it's actually that particular pastor in that particular church, you know? So if you fight, or sometimes people will say, oh, actually, not only am I a member of this congregation, I believe myself to be a potential faith leader in this particular space. And then there, what will happen is that people they'll be suppressed, like, oh, but you're too gay to be, to form a role in this space. So that's where the intersection is for me, where we enter and where we interject and where we claim our space in faith spaces. Yeah.
Wow. I don't think I have a comment regarding
I just want to interject.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Yes, Gwen, sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, Gwen.
Oh no, I was like, I don't know regarding the colonization between Christianity and how it plays a role in the society today within my community. I'm not sure how it's taken within my community, because to me, it feels like they are not really judged within the Christianity part. I mean, they do embrace themselves, but at the same time, they don't want to show it too obviously that, you know what, I'm different and I need people to accept me in this way and not want to judge me by just seeing my appearances. So I'm not sure how it's like taken within the Christianity part. So it's very interesting to hear how how it's in some way related, but in some way also apart.
I mean, yeah, I don't have a very good relationship with Christianity. So I guess my views on the way Christianity has affected the queer community is a little bit different because of that. And I mean, growing up, like knowing that at any moment you might wake up to anointing oil on your foreheads with a group of people trying to pray the gay away was like an experience. You get what I'm saying? So there's certain things that in terms of the Christian space, exactly, I don't feel like it should be necessary. Like Nosana has basically said, it's very beautiful when people say that they claim their space and then they fought in order to be recognized within their churches. And that's something that honestly, I never even attempted to do. I sort of kind of like gave up with the whole idea of trying to speak to people who do not understand or want to embrace who I am as a person. So I moved more towards, you know what, it's fine. I'll go create my own community of like-minded individuals somewhere else away from you. But I do think that, as Masana said, those are moments of victory when people can actually say that, hey, this is what I did, this is how I fought in order for me to be recognized in my church, in my space, in my spiritual community. And that's beautiful. But as for the history of it is just terrible, right? They
Yeah. The history of it just sheds like a very bad light on it. And in some way, it's telling the people that, you know what, we don't accept you in our church. We don't accept you as one of us. So you're always going to be different. You're always going to be just one-sided when it comes to your Christianity within our church as the community.
I'm not sure. Is there someone else also coming in?
I'm not sure, right?
No, look, at the end of the day, here in the Free State, I happen to know that there are some queer pastors, and I've been part of different faiths, you know, and really this is not my speciality, this genre, you know, but I'm familiar with a spiritualist who's an intersex spiritualist, and I love how they describe that because there are two sexes kind of like combined in one body, that's kind of like an angelic expression and things like that. But I really can't comment too much on this particular. I wish people who, you know, practice faith and the queerness combined, you know, would teach us something. Because there's more to queer stories than your own like faith and things like that. So my own faith my brand is physical divine, you know. If I could talk about that, it's that I'm saying there's the physical and there's the divine, and I've made it one word, right? And what I'm doing there, I'm reconciling things that are supposed to be the opposite. So in any project that I do, it doesn't have to be my faith, it doesn't have to be my religion, it has to be my life. If somebody asks me, why don't I go to church? I'm like, I'm in my body. I'm living my authenticity, I'm living my truth, and everything that I try to do every day, I try to do it in a way, especially that makes two different parts agree. So that's balance, that's harmony, that's reconciling different things. I'm no way the mediator or the peacemaker I wish to be yet, but I would like my projects to kind of be part of that, to kind of like see, okay, here are two different warring people, two people that don't agree. Like, how do we make like something out of that makes sense to both parties?
Indeed, indeed. Anything else you would like to add, Ria?
Asana summed it up really beautifully. So I'm gonna, like, my trauma is showing, guys. Okay, so I'm gonna.
Moving on to the next question. How would you say the unknown GBV pandemic regarding trans women being raped and beaten and no one is speaking for them, how would you, or rather, what are your thoughts on that specific statement regarding the gender-based violence pandemic that we are going through within our country and how trans women are being raped and beaten and no one is really speaking for them?
I think, Nafana, this is going to be more your wheelhouse. I have a few opinions, but I think sorry, I can't hear you.
We're talking about the pandemic, during the pandemic, the GBV that happened during the pandemic and how trans women weren't being spoken for.
Yes.
Look, during the pandemic, the GBV that was going on was heightened, and particularly perhaps if you were trans, if you were queer and you were employed, perhaps you lost your job and you had to come home. I think what we need to remember that the trauma that's experienced by the queer community is not always at the hands of an intimate partner. It can be anyone. It can be you going to the shop to buy bread and then you are harassed with hate speech, or it is just your own family making you feel, even during mealtime, that you are going to not enjoy this meal as much as the rest of us. And at any point, and then imagine if you're stuck with a partner. Imagine if you can't leave because you've got nowhere else to go. You've decided you'd rather going to stay in this relationship and you're not going to go home. I believe that the plight of any trans person during the pandemic when it comes to GBV was the same plight of everyone in South Africa. I think sometimes we want to believe that the trans community wants special treatment, special toilets, special this, but we don't. We want just the same human rights as everyone. We want to be treated equally the same, you know?
Yes.
We are in the minority, so we won't easily be noticed, and therefore it will be heightened for the work that we do, that, hey, this is something that hasn't been highlighted. But I really do say that with GBV, with anything, because of course, I was mentioning yesterday, a queer couple is easily a laughing stock when they do report a crime at perhaps a police station, and therefore it won't be easily believable that, hey, you guys are actually, let's take it seriously. But then I will hear the same of heterosexual couples. But I'm the woman and this is the guy, and because the guy exerts a lot of masculinity, a lot of authority to other men who are other policemen, all of a sudden my trauma is not important because this guy just said, hey, my gents, let's just let me and my woman sort it out. Let's just, you know. So I don't have a special actual kind of recommendation. I think what we are suffering in the trans community is what a lot of people who are suffering the hands of violence in the GBV situation are suffering.
I completely agree with Masana. I think the only thing that would probably be the most frustrating aspect for me in terms of gender-based violence where trans women are concerned, right, is the concept of like, why didn't you guys just fight? You know, like when people say things like, no, because you are born in a gender that you do not identify as, why didn't you just fight the person? Because you guys were born of the same gender. It's very annoying when somebody is taken to the police station or to a hospital, and that is the kind of treatment they receive. Like, you are both masculine, so why didn't you fight? Or
Yes.
you're both female, so why didn't you fight? Which I think is a different concept than what cishet women would receive if they went to a police station. They wouldn't tell you, like, why didn't you fight with your man? You know, like, why didn't you guys just fight it out? And that's the most frustrating part, I feel, where this is concerned. And there's also not a lot of rape education in South Africa in terms of how do you proceed once it has happened. There's certain things that you only find out if something like that has, in essence, happened to you. And yes, it's all good and well for us to be hopeful that nothing like that will ever happen. But considering the amount of violence that has been experienced over the past few years, it's very important for people to know certain things. Like, if this does happen to you, this is exactly how you need to proceed in order for us to gather as much evidence as possible for you to have the best case, right? If you ever wish to take it further and go to court and things like that, right? And on top of the fact that I know my brain is like a little scattered because of the different parts of this topic, because we're talking about rape culture in South Africa, but we're also talking about trans women specifically. And I do agree with Masana that it's not specifically about the plight of like no one specifically speaking for them, because nobody needs to speak for them, right? Or for trans women. It's also a part of, are they invited into conversations when we're talking about rape culture in South Africa and how we can alleviate that, right? Are they being invited to the table so that they have a say in these matters? Because people often think that it's only a cishet woman's plight to be like raped and violated in that way. And I have a problem with that. I feel like they need to be invited to the table so that they can have their 2 cents and say, this is how we need to proceed in order to protect ourselves and to protect each other. And this is how we can be prepared for what is happening.
Yeah. Yes. Nosana.
Yes, Gwen.
Would you like to add on to what Ria just mentioned, or can we move on to the next question?
Look, I think there's some training that's needed in institutions. Like, I'm not sure how many Tutuzela care centers there are. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Tutuzela care centers. Are you
No,
familiar
I'm
with
not.
them? Tutuzela care centers, if Tutuzela, you are comforting them. And they are those centers that are in hospitals sometimes for instances like rape. That particular section of that hospital is designed to deal with the most sensitive matters, right? And most of the time, their customers are supposed to just be children and women. And it is forgotten that there are trans women, that perhaps a rape scenario won't only happen in the vagina. So it would be just my hope that that they do consider that a rape can happen somewhere else in the body, and that place is also assessed for evidence, and that, you know, a person's sexual orientation and gender identity when they're gender diverse is not seen as such a shock that they feel excluded from that care. So the same also with the police stations, where a trans person should not be put in the same cell as perhaps men. A trans woman should not be put in the same cell as men. There's all these things. And quite frankly, if you can't call your lawyer and make these things like immediately accessible to you, you are left out of the conversation, because you will be perhaps a trans man and you may not have had bottom surgery. And if it is known in that cell where you're with men, sometimes it has been a situation where the policemen themselves will make this announcement to the other people in the J cell with you and put you more at risk of being violated. So these violations within our justice system and our health system, they sometimes continue. It's not a GBV thing whereby it starts at home and it ends at home, and then when you try to access assistance, that there's secondary victimization and sometimes extra violation. So these are all the things that the work also sometimes needs to continue.
Okay. We actually have a question for you, Nosana. It reads, how much support in a social development aspect and in a resource aspect when it comes to IPV in queer communities? I'm not sure what IPV stands for.
Intimate partner violence. How much support in a social development aspect? I'm not sure if you mean social development in the Department of Social Development, and in the resource aspect, I'm not sure which resource aspect.
I'm not sure, because that's how the question was stated.
Look, the Department of Social Development, I think I mentioned yesterday that we are working quite closely with them as Hlona Molemo, that the shelters, because trans women sometimes stay in abusive relationships because they've got nowhere else to go. So usually cis women will get a space in a shelter. And if now it's a situation of the shelter needs a sensitization on, like, this is just a woman, you know, people are sharing the same bathroom. In homes, the bathroom is shared. So the Department of Social Development in the Free State, I think, is quite open, but we need donations, we need resources, we need buildings, we need spaces of care. And also we need people to open up their own spaces that maybe we're not aware of, to kind of say, listen, you are welcome. And even my own self as just an individual, as a family member, do you know that there's somebody in your family that needs help? Are you sitting there and watching somebody else have a problem and not caring? Meantime, you know, you're single, you live by yourself, you've got a spare bedroom, you've got a spare couch. This is everybody's responsibility. We can't just blame institutions, we can't just blame departments. And yes, it has been said that, oh, I just don't want an unemployed somebody sitting in my house eating my groceries, right? Mm-hmm. But we've all got the ability to care and share and assist and teach somebody, you know? Yeah. I would offer that we all have an ability to be a resource within ourselves, and also to be socially available to anyone and anything, even if it's just to say to your cousin or your sister, let them come over and do their homework at my house. Let them come over for a Saturday afternoon. It doesn't mean they need to move in, you know? So that's what I'd like to offer as advice.
Yeah. Very understandable. Very understandable. I hope that answered your question, Mr. Twala. I hope your question was answered and it was made clear to you. So as we move on to the next question I have for our panel speakers, is that as you both your roles as artists and as advocates, how have you used your art in your advocacy, and how would you advise artists to use their craft in activism? Rhea.
So I'll start off and say that, hi. I'll just start off by saying that, honestly speaking, there is something that Adisi really once said, who's like a South African poet. He actually just won like a global poetry competition or something representing South Africa. But he once said that it's so annoying when people say, as a Black man, like he needs to write a poem about being a Black man in South Africa, because every poem that he writes is about his experience as a Black man in South Africa. It doesn't matter if what he's specifically talking about is a Che, it's his view on the Che as a Black man in South Africa. And I guess a lot of what I feel is that as well, that anything that I put out is going to be my view, my authentic story of being a non-binary lesbian in South Africa. That's just how it's going to be, right? But I also understand the importance of things like applied theater and art therapy, because those things are a way for us to push education and learning through art, and advocacy through art. And artivism is a beautiful field that I think that we need to be more open into exploring. So for me, for example, in 2019, before COVID, there was a debut show that I did, a one-woman show called Black Girl Rant. And the show is basically about, like, my whole body is on display. Well, not the whole body. I'm not completely in the nude, but my whole body is on display. And then there's all these surgical marks on them. And the audience is in essence invited to draw the problems that they feel they can see on the body. And this is about also targeting specific groups of women in specific groups. So it debuted in Lagos, Nigeria. So I was there for 2 weeks before the show happened, meeting with women who are from Nigeria, and then cultivating the solo act to include their narrative and what they see in the world. So I do think it's incredibly important for us to use like our art as part of the advocacy that we do and the activism that we do, because people will watch a movie and they will listen to a poem and they will go watch a theater production, but very rarely are they willing to hear us talk and have a discourse anymore. And art has always been a very powerful tool. Like, for example, during apartheid, they were the posters that are now archived in history, like the artworks, posters that were put up that helped tremendously in destroying the propaganda that the National Party at the time was trying to make sure was out there. So yeah, I think it's incredibly important. And I feel like every single thing that you do counts. So just writing a poem about you and what's going on in your life, you just addressing that it comes from a Black woman's perspective is incredibly powerful. It doesn't necessarily have to be you talking about trans rights, but as long as you are a trans woman or a trans man or a trans non-binary individual who's telling their story from their perspective, even if it's about a chair, it is powerful because it is that perspective that people will be able to relate to.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, thanks. Why don't you give us these questions in advance, Gwen? But it's always nice to think like something that you just hear, actually, what am I doing when it comes to that, right?
Yeah.
I get involved as much as I can in projects that I believe in and that I'm attracted to, that hold the same beliefs as I do. And if I'm not involved and I see there's a project like that, I insert myself somehow. I write letters to projects that I see that I'm aligned with the cause that they're part of. And I always try to include what I'm able to bring. So I'm really hoping that there's still more that I can do when it comes to that. And I'm really hoping that I'm given the opportunity to be as vulnerable as I can be, because sometimes just adding a little something as an external person, you know, fine. But I think if we're really, really raw and really, really like naked, that's really what we can really dare ourselves to be. I really want us to have a nude flash mob one day, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I'll do it. I'm just posing it out there. You know, when you ask me something off the cuff like this, the first thing I do is the first thing I think of is the most daring thing. But yeah, I'm always inspired by things that have happened and things that I wish would come to South Africa. So my artistry is always very much about bringing something that's needed, that can solve problems.
Okay. Ria, here's a question here for you. One of the participants are asking, when are we getting another sex concert?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry for laughing. For those of you guys who don't know, the person who just asked when are we having another sex concert is my father. That's my dad, who's joining us in the conversation. And Tata Chwala, thank you, Honorable Delegate, for that amazing question that you just gave us. So in 2017, I did something called the Sex Concert at the festival at the Christ Art Sofia's. And the name was because of the shock factor. Because when people think the Sex Concert, they were thinking that maybe people were gonna be doing like porn on stage, or it was some burlesque kind of themed thing. And in essence, it was just a celebration of sexual fluidity and fluid identity. And the word sex was not sex as in check wow, wow, wow. No, it was sex as in gender versus identity. And that was what that was about. Hopefully we can do another one maybe next year or the year after. It all depends on the funding. If we get funding from Concert South Africa, because we did apply to do some stuff on there. But I will note that my dad, despite the fact that he works in a very conservative place, he works, by the way, Nasana, the reason why you got that question is because he works for social development. So I'm guessing he wanted to know how he can help. And
why
he went to
who
social
works for
development with like a bunch of tickets. My dad works with that's my dad, yeah. And he basically had like a bunch of tickets and he sold them to like these old people. And he was just like, I don't care if you go or not, but you're buying a ticket.
Yeah.
Right? So a bunch of these old people bought tickets to the sex concert, and I'm guessing he just wants another opportunity to do that. But
To
next
campaign
year,
for it.
Baba, next year. Yeah.
Love it that dad is willing to campaign for one of his daughters' projects that she is doing. Kudos to you, Dad.
Hey, now that we know, we've got better answers for the future, huh?
So next, I would like to share a video in regards to the LGBTQI community in Nigeria, which is the legend of the underground. So going to share that video.
It is punishable. 14 years imprisonment. It is punishable. 14 years imprisonment to be gay.
It's annoying. Every Nigerian have the right to party. So why should these guys be arrested? Because they will perceive sexuality. I came to the US with one bag, no one friend.
Nobody is free until all of us are free.
I feel guilty because I have people back home who cannot have this that I'm having.
That country is a waste of time. Just leave it behind.
On Sunday, intelligence arrested 57 homosexual youths.
Someone died there. Someone died.
It's about being able to make a change and make a difference. So going to Nigeria is something I need to do.
We have a community that is thrown out to survive by themselves.
The definition of a gay is when you are caught having sexual intercourse with a guy and they didn't caught me. The whole world is watching me, so do your worst.
For Nigeria, is we fear what we don't know.
When are we going to overcome all this?
Nigeria don't got community. This is the time for change.
I want to encourage billions and zillions of people, telling them that you have rights. Do you know why? Because you're human.
Hello and welcome. My name is Kamali Powell, and I'm the Executive Director of Rainbow Railroad. We're an international-based organization in Canada and the United States with the goal of helping LGBTQI people who are facing persecution find pathways to safety. And I'm
Okay, in essence of that video that we just watched, after we have seen that video, I'm going to ask, coming from a country where being gay is criminalized, how do we safely teach young people about themselves, their identity, and their sexuality while facing the risk of prosecution?
You do so secretly. You can't educate where you can also be arrested to be educating. I mean, even this conversation and probably your question is, so dangerous. And it would be very nice if there would be exchange programs from countries where it's legal to kind of be able to take them out of the environment and teach them some coping mechanisms and some survival tools and some ways for them to safely practice their lives. I mean, it's so unfortunate that sometimes that you can't enrich and become your full potential and live your full, complete life till the end in your own country, that perhaps you need to plan to leave your country. But sometimes it is also a contribution that you need to make for a generation after you, that what have I done with my own life that is going to ensure that it's better and safer for those after me. So in perhaps being in contact and being in touch with programs that are unifying countries, whatever the UN is doing, whatever programs that are, trying to actually assist those countries. Inform yourself, like, who is trying to help me outside, because sometimes they need somebody inside to help them also help the cause, right? So yeah. I would suggest like that, because quite frankly, people think that in South Africa, it's so easy for us. Our constitution is beautiful, it's all very nice, but you will find that lived experiences are so different from that. So even us in South Africa, I appeal to us in South Africa to find our brothers and sisters and gender non-conforming siblings outside to kind of say, how can we help you? What do you need from me? Do you need a place to stay for a week? Like, once again, I'm appealing for us to make ourselves individually available. You don't need an exchange program for that, and then you see, particularly if you are in a university setup, if you are in an NGO setup, appeal to wherever your space is, especially if you know somebody, and just say, hey, how can we just host this particular person, and then you see what resources can be made available. Like, any assistance for any short amount of time can really change somebody's life.
Indeed.
Assistance for any short amount of time can really change somebody's life.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I agree. Things are a little complicated. Like, I've kind of made a history for myself in academic circles about trying to dispel certain stereotypes or certain histories about homosexuality, specifically within the African continent. And it's kind of been like a passion of mine to see how we can help our brothers and sisters in other countries. Like, the fact that South Africa and Cape Verde are the only two countries on the African continent that don't have limitations at all within LGBTQI rights. So full limitations constitutionally protected. That doesn't mean socially that's protected, but constitutionally it's protected. But out of the 10 countries that are where being gay is not criminalized on the African continent, South Africa and Cape Verde are the only two that constitutionally do not have limitations to those rights. And that's a travesty. The fact that so many people have limitations on who they need to be and who they are and how they can be themselves. I have visited Nigeria before, and what I did notice is, maybe my gaydar is on point, but I could always tell. And my advice is going to be the same advice that I gave to a bunch of people when I saw them in Nigeria. Start a book club, right? A a lot of revolutions started because some people claimed that they had a book club. Just a group of people that had a book that they were supposedly reading every month. And then they had a meetup in somebody's house or somebody's basement, right? And in that house or in that basement, they had a book club where all you need to do is read the blurb and read a summary online on Google to know what the book is about, but actually open up those spaces where we know for a fact that we're safe and we're not prosecuted. And all of these things can be anonymous. So you don't have to make it a situation where people have to be completely honest about who they are and where they come from and what they do for a living. It can just be a space where people can openly be themselves without having to divulge any personal information about themselves, so that they can have a space to like learn and be carefree within those spaces. You can start parties where you claim it's just an exclusive party, but in actual fact, we know that you're trying to open up spaces for queer communities in these countries. So there will always be ways to navigate around these places. But my first suggestion would be like open a book. Honestly speaking, best way you can do it. Nobody's gonna want to read. Unfortunately, nobody's gonna want to read whatever book you're reading to tell whether or not because unfortunately we live in that world nowadays where people don't take things seriously. So that's what I advise. And unfortunately, there's so much misinformation about homosexuality, specifically in the African context, or being queer in the African context, when we all know that, for example, since the Woman King just came out recently, you know, Dahomey had eunuchs that were essentially seen as honorary wives to the king. And these were people that could also marry men, men who could marry other men. And they were seen as eunuchs or priests and things like that. There's documented history in Egypt, there's documented history in East Africa and in West Africa of homosexuality existing pre-colonialism and it being accepted, right? So it's sad that post-colonial history, some of this was eradicated and erased. But my point is try and find ways to find that history and use it as precedent to move the law forward. Because that's the only thing you can do, find the precedent that is necessary for you guys to tackle these things, writing bills, writing law, but open a book club. That's how I would start. Open a book club. Or start a book club. I don't know which word is correct. Start a book club. Yeah, start a book club.
Do we have any questions from the participants? Do we have any questions from the participants? The floor is open for some questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I missed this topic, but the sub-themes that were I wanted to revel in some of these sub-themes, especially some of the ones that are about like body shaming or fat shaming and reclaiming the, you know, whatever. Have we talked about that? Or am I totally changing the?
I don't think we have.
It hasn't been any particular. Should I just look for one? Should I look for one and then I'll ask Ria the question?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Should I just look for one?
Somebody can do the same. Let's ask each other all one very difficult question.
We've spoken about a few things.
Somebody can do the same. Let's ask each other all one very difficult.
Oh goodness, as if the questions today haven't been difficult already. But that's okay, cool. Let's do that.
That's not stopping anyone else that you were asking to ask us anything.
Yeah.
That's not something anyone else that you are asking to ask it anything.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience?
I guess my main question was around some of these we have touched on, fat shaming and fat activism. Have we had some positive feedback around that? Have we spoken about reclaiming our fat and reclaiming our curves and reclaiming our thickness? And is there activism around that? And where does that queerness part? Because what I was saying yesterday is that if you're non-binary, for example, it's so difficult to not be slender and identify as non-binary, right? And I was just wondering if there have been any kind of other kind of opinions around body size and queerness and that kind of thing. I was just quite curious of if maybe there was something on that. Body size and queerness and this kind of thing. I was just quite curious of.
When it comes to fat shaming and fat activism, we spoke on it specifically from a mental health component on the 30th, right? So we spoke about the beauty of sort of like reclaiming what it is you know about yourself, like the small things, and then how to deal with the anxiety when like people are like throwing these words at you and how you can navigate that for yourself. And yeah, I'm trying to remember now what Kezia said, but it's speaking more on a mental health and a mental wellness point of view, where the fat activism was concerned. So yeah, but I'm not the whatchamacallit, the expert on that.
You may
but I
call it.
completely agree with you, Nosana, because as a non-binary person, there's nothing I can wear that will hide these. Né? And then let me tell you, I don't know how many times I've said this. The moment I have enough money, these things are gone. Like,
but then this
them off
hasn't happened. What I'm
It's not
asking
even-
about. I'm sorry, Ria.
So I can
interject.
tremendously understand how, as some.
Sorry, Ria. I was
No,
hoping
no,
that what you were
not.
going to tell me is that we are supposed to see the
Continue,
invisible,
Sana.
or we are supposed to make things that we see that what invisible. you were going to tell me is that we are supposed to see the invisible. Do you know what I mean? That like what we need to train ourselves, what we need to train
I
our
completely
eyes.
understand. So,
You know what I mean? I think that part of the revolution
what
should
we need to
be.
train
our eyes. I'm on repeat. Is there a way to stop the echo? Okay, it stopped. The reason why I'm asking is because I think we need to stop training our eyes to believe what we see. That's the reason for my question. I believe that we need to start training our ears to see and believe what we're told when another person explains their identity, their sexuality. I think it's not fair if we watch somebody that we know be something that we perceive and then not believe, you know, what they say they are about themselves. The same with aging, you know, that I think that there's so much expectation around, like, if you're older, you like to say this, Ria, the older the berry, the sweeter the juice. I don't know about any of that, but I do believe that aging and bodies, that I think we've got a little bit more responsibility not to see it because somebody could be really, really old, but be young in their years, or somebody could be really, really fat but skinny in their body, or anything. Like with all these things that we are training ourselves with the terms in gender, we need to train ourselves with the ageism and with the fat as well, you know, because I remember when there was anorexia as an issue where I was in school at a particular time, where we learned that this anorexic person sees themselves as fat in the mirror. And that's a condition that we've never re-explored. Instead, we just now exacerbate like somebody who's fat, and then now I don't even know, I've got no gauge on what anorexia looks like today, or other forms of body dysmorphia, you know? So I was just wondering if we could just train our ears into kind of believing what we told, instead of seeing somebody and not agreeing with them based on like, oh no, you can't be gay, you're too pretty. Oh, you can't be gay, you can't be this, and you can't be that. And then somebody tells, no, like a friend of mine was saying, somebody told me they're non-binary and I didn't understand. Somebody told me that they were trans and it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, why do you still need to process something that you just need to believe? So I just wanted to add to those topics in that manner, that I think that in this particular subject, and I think what you're hoping to kind of like get out there is that there's certain things that aren't things that you're going to see with your eyes, but you must believe when you hear them, when somebody tells you.
Yeah.
You hear them when somebody tells you.
Yeah. It's actually something I've never thought of actually. About the idea of training yourself or your perception of things, right? And I can see how extremely powerful like that kind of thinking can be. But I'm also like, how do we even begin to try and make people see things a certain way when the majority of what we see on social media, on the internet, on television, like all of these things shape our perception of the world, whether we like it or not. So now how do we begin to even change the way we view things? You get what I'm saying? How do we, I don't know, man. Like, I love the concept. I love the idea of what you're saying. But how would we even begin to target that in essence? How would we even begin to shape our perception of these
none
things?
of this work is done by making people do anything. Like the whole planting of
You
the
said we
seed
must
and
ask
the
each other
idea.
difficult questions, my friend. Yours.
Done by people do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. As I was saying that because I also have to learn the very same thing that I'm talking about, that I'm just reminding myself that if somebody's open and they're receptive to an idea, if something resonates with them, that's the only time that they can participate in the knowledge and in the experience. We can't be trying to force somebody that is against a particular idea to kind of force them to understand it and believe in it and, you know, action it out. I think it's just a matter of the fact that if people are out here listening to this podcast and people are out here listening to the idea that gender is mental, then everything else is mental. Your body is mental, your age is mental. And that was all I was adding to it. Yeah.
We actually have a question from one of the participants. It was, how would you advise fathers to raise their children as activists?
Continue, Baba. Continue. You are doing exactly right. You must teach the others.
Continue, Baba. Continue. You are doing exactly right. Yes, Nene. Yes, Nene. Obapala is on a roll today. Nah, I think Baba's just using this as a way to like be braggadocious. How about you tell us what you did? That's what there's no one who can advise you here. Tell us what you did. I will tell you guys like a very cute story. My youngest brother, my youngest half brother is 15 years old. So he's going to grade 10 next year. He's turning 16 next year. And like early this year, he had an argument with his English teacher. And then he was basically telling his English teacher that his English teacher needs to be aware of certain things. Like when he's addressing the class in an English perspective, because the way the English teacher teaches them will help them be able to, like destroy the patriarchy with their language and how they speak. So there was this whole incident where he wanted to destroy the patriarchy in tongues. This is like 15 years. He wasn't even 15 yet. He was like 14 at the time. And I get a call saying that this is something your sister might have influenced you to do. But I would say, I don't know why I'm advising you about how you raised me. It makes no sense, man. Open your mic and speak, man. I think that's the only way this is gonna work. Even though my dad is probably not gonna do it. If I know him well enough, he's not. Hello. Please open your mic. I'm gonna try and unmute you. Let's see what you do if we try and unmute you. He just sent me a private message saying I shouldn't expose him. All right, cool. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to exactly advise other people to raise their children as activists. Let them know that their opinion is valid. There's never been an opportunity, like there's never been a time where I didn't feel that my opinion was valid. So let them know that their opinion is valid, and allow them to ask you questions. But now, don't allow them to just keep saying why. I would say like try and direct the question that you want them to ask, and let them read. Let them read books. Like get your children books, y'all. Like, yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Get your children books, okay? Yes, that's what I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say. But honestly speaking, Babtwala, you must get on here and actually tell us how to raise children like this, because
Please, Babtwala, please give us some knowledge on that matter. Give us some knowledge on that matter.
I know my dad, he's not gonna. I know you. I know where you live. That's all I'm saying. Knowing him, he's probably not gonna respond, but.
Okay, if he doesn't want to unmute the thingy, he can write it like within the comments though, at least.
All right. Are we having any more questions?
It doesn't seem that way.
Yeah. Well, May I please have my exit, and may I please conclude my contribution? Thank you so much. The two of you in the Arts and Health Summit have been pretty cool. Some of the questions have been daring, and some of them I've learned a little bit about what I think about certain things. And the two of you, I really wish you guys continue this kind of work and get more people to teach us some new things, you know? So really well done. This is the last day, right? I was hoping more people would be on this summit.
I was also
on the panel, I was really hoping so. So I hope you share our information with each other so we get to meet each other. On the panel, I was really hoping so. So I hope you share. Thank you. I hope you share our information with each other so we get to meet each other.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
That will
I have to
definitely
exit
be
my
happening.
current venue before 7.
Thank you so much, Nasana. Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you. All right, take care. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful evening. Before 7. Okay, bye.
Bye, Nasana. Thank you.
Care. Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Wonderful evening. Okay, bye. Bye, Nasana. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming to our last day of the Arts and Health Summit. And in closing, we will be streaming a short documentary titled Eclectic Spoken Wordsmith. So please do enjoy. We appreciate your participation within the summit that we had. It was very lovely, it was very informative, and thank you very much.
A butterfly emerges from a soft crevice. Violet hair, green eyes, wet eyes, pixie smile, a reflection of the lake, the turning earth. She does not know how much I love her, that I would form my body into cocoon wax. If I would become that air, such that to glide through and feel the speed of traveling, the exciting tremors of the world. She knows to fly, form span of her wings, make butter of the air and glide through its wind, switch hands in the breeze swinging in the highlands, light of aurora leaving whispers of its trail in the dark, luminous, beats on the mountaintops, springs flowing like there is liquid in the air, heartstrings twining into liquids of heat, fire like lava in the chest, skin moving all over the earth, covering the husk of its bone. I want to hold you, like the oceans hold the continents, and the moon sways onto the beach sand where entire rivers evaporate into that space where stars suffer to contain themselves, exploding right in front of you. Yours is the glow of this very sun, the streaming of its light between the leaves, transfiguring mattresses into ocean beds, paper on the walls like mirrors, bricks holding their memory, the house creaking your name, that we can ask so many questions about the nature of this world, metamorphosis, all the ways in which we change, exchange our atoms for growth. Before me, this reflection of my eyes, mirror of my soul, image of beauty, eyelids fluttering like summer butterflies, like your eyes are lined in soft green shadows, and there are a meadow. All of this contained in the image of your beauty. Hair like the reeds blown gently in the wind, strands of the soil which twisted into roots, threads of silk, lines of overgrowth, rope of interwoven branch, which grows up over until the cloud, revealing an open sky above you, meadow. Wide enough there's a horizon for our dreams, and memories captured in the rising pollen, flower aroma in the mist. I'm overcome in the sensation, and just as worm makes cocoon from its tongue, I want to empty on you the air of my lung, the blood of my heart, the liquid of my mouth. I whisper that you are the glow of the sun, the reflection of its light in the moon. So much I feel that I will be blinded by it. My eyes would burn up to see the sun, still so deeply feeling that warmth in the darkness. Body of fluorescent pulse, of moth-tempting light. Before me, this reflection of my one true desire, and all those floating clouds. All of this held tight in the feeling of your breath and the warmth of your soul. I'm Tsiamo, my friends call me Tsi. Born in Johannesburg in '98, moved to Bloemfontein in '07. I see myself as part of the artistic network and the wider ecosystem of the city here. Started scribbling together some poems in high school, took it very seriously in 2015 as part of the Vocal Revolutionaries program, did some slams, and in 2018 I founded the Poetry Club at the University of the Free State Poet Club. We perform at festivals, we write together, we collaborate, we have lots of fun. We see poetry as some form of community. As a poet, I mostly see poetry as a philosophy, exploring concepts I wouldn't otherwise be able to talk about, writing complicated metaphors about rain and madness, death and deceit, and overall just proving to people that there's a lot more to the world than what we see. Well, you know, as a poet, you've got your own identity, you've got your way of being, your way of seeing things, and it's very different for various artists. So the first thing you need to do is find a community. That's been the biggest challenge.